I have learned that fear limits you and your vision. It serves as blinders to what may be just a few steps down the road for you. The journey is valuable, but believing in your talents, your abilities, and your self-worth can empower you to walk down an even brighter path. Transforming fear into freedom. Now, how great would that be? That's an anonymous quote. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Inspired Word Cafe. I like that quote because I love how it ends, transforming fear into freedom. Now, how great would that be? How many of us still live by fear? But fear is a good thing, because without fear, how would you know love? Take that, put that in your pipe. No. But it's true. So these are the things that I've learned. No. Anyway, guys, welcome to the Inspired Word on Shaw TV Okanagan. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us. We have a special show tonight. If you notice, I haven't been hosting. Our young master, Cole, has been doing a lot of hosting and doing really well. But I asked to do tonight's show because of this young lady. I met her a year ago, I think, kind of unofficially. First at Canada Day, she saw a show. Then she reached out, and then we became Facebook friends, and then she invited me down to Summerland, and that's the first time I heard her read and recite, and I was like, oh my God, we have to get you on IWC. So she came out, and then some guy was needling her about doing this poetry slam, and she decided to do it, and she won. So tonight, we have the Springfield versus Shelbyville Poetry Slam champ in the house. And I'm going to shut up because her words require almost a blank slate, because her words will paint pictures. And I want to see what sort of pictures you imagine from her words. I'm just going to simply say, come to the mic, my friend, all the way from Summerland, Sophia Jackson.
This is the first thing that I wrote about a year and a half ago. My family, we lost my aunt, and it was a very traumatic thing for us, but the writing helped me. So this is one of the first things I wrote. So this is from my Aunt Carla. When cancer steals the first wild woman you ever knew, there will be a terrible breaking. The kind that starts at a single point and sweeps suddenly outward in 1,000 directions, like the sharpest spider's web. But then, way down beneath the shattered map, there will come this pressure, a kind of intense need, not clogged with grief like you thought it would be, but something like that feeling like you get before a grand adventure. Nerve-wracking, but at the same time, not unpleasant. And you'll think, this could be interesting. Soon, everyday things will become surreal and amusing. There will be a day when winter and spring cop a feel as they pass each other in the hallway. And as you're walking to the mailbox, the pulsing fragrance of willow will mingle with the tang of melting snow. When this happens, you will lose the ability to understand what motivates people to do anything at all. Later at home, you'll sit motionless for 30 minutes while the cat kneads at your forearm and generally makes herself comfortable. You will consider this time well spent. You will discover that you like jazz, really like jazz. One day you'll wake up and Charles Mingus will just be there, getting in your soul and making you crazy. You've never been to a jazz bar and you'll be afraid to go because part of you thinks that kind of atmosphere could actually cause you to dissolve. Because if ever there was a porthole to another dimension, it would be found in a jazz bar. The doors just keep opening. Your body will begin to process time at a different speed, and your mouth will form the word caramelize like it's some kind of incantation. Your tongue will become a pleasant demon, all languid sin and slow simmer. So when you say the word caramelize, the world around you will fall into that patient rhythm, and anyone within earshot will emit the tiniest quiver. They will understand the word for what it is, a delicate barrier to something magnificent, and they won't be able to help themselves. And when the waitress asks if you'd like to hear the dessert specials, before she can finish speaking, you'll say, yes, which is how you usually say it in your head, only this time you'll say it out loud. And for God's sake, could she skip the apple crumble and get to the chocolate and the cream? You want a warm mound, a facade hiding a molten core, something you can destroy, your spoon the battering ram that will fell the walls and be bathed in the spoils of war. That, on a plate. Yes, coffee, yes, yes. In the fall, you design bizarre, immersive eating experiences to test on your best friend. First, you make sure she is hungry, because hunger heightens the senses and makes one both eager and open to suggestion. Then you stew plums in brandy with cinnamon. Next, tell her in great detail of the homemade vanilla ice cream you have waiting in the freezer, made with dark, full-bodied beans from Madagascar. While the plums are cooling, lead her outside onto the deck, where the warm hug of summer has given way to the first fingers of frost. Stand there, looking into the darkness, listening to the coyotes. As you wait, your noses reset, picking up the last desperate strands of potted thyme, the whisper of wood smoke, and everywhere the heavy, sweet burden of dying vegetation. You start to feel chilled. The coyotes are closer now. You can hear them just across the road in the trees. Perhaps they'll come down the driveway. Perhaps they'll get closer still. Just as you reach this dramatic cusp, when mental and physical faculties are holding hands in giddy desperation, lead her back inside, where the room has fully succumbed to the influence of syrup. It's like walking into a cloud, the ghosts of fruit flesh and alcohol masticating in your nose and lungs. Immediately, it is on your skin, perfuming your hair, clinging to your clothes. You are enveloped, made welcome. And then, when pleasure has been suitably deferred and worshipped, you say, yes, it is now time to eat. All of these things will lead you to the conclusion that you are a certain kind of person. If you imagine that creative people are looking for ways to get a peek behind the big curtain before it's time for lights out, you have to imagine the avenues people tread to get closer to that veil. There are those of the ethereal clan, air and fire, who seek to empty out, to be light, clear, purified. They fast and meditate, jump out of airplanes, hike for hours, and crave the sun. Then there are the earth and water types, who are drawn inexorably towards saturation. These ones enjoy a certain capacity for pleasure. They possess the ability to just slow right down and absorb. You will know absolutely that you are of the saturation variety. And you will come to understand that it is all right for you to adore the world in your funny little way, always inviting it for dinner and asking it to stay for just one more drink. Knowledge like this is like a battle cry, or in your case, a battle sigh. No point in arming yourself. Ecstasy can't be achieved without the possibility of being wounded. Sandpaper creates a smooth surface by going against the grain. This will be the start of your own tiny crusade, and you will be glad to be fighting. And as you saunter into no man's land with icing sugar on your cheek, you'll tuck into your pocket a small reminder of your quest. Start now, then go real slow. Thanks. More food, because I run a baking club in Summerland. It's very silly. So I write a lot about food. Can't be helped. This one is called Temptation. When it comes to life, I'm a stewer. Always simmering, never quite cooked. And like anything that's been subjected to pressure for long enough, I'm prone to spontaneous ruptures of willpower. You know that first fat bubble in the spaghetti sauce that suddenly rises up and bursts, thus ruining your perfectly clean stovetop? All of my failures are like that. Brought on by time and tension, then driven to eruption in a single messy moment. Every time it's the same. I'm perfectly aware that temptation is going to rob me and leave me naked in the desert surrounded by a confetti of crumbs. I know. Then chocolate saunters thick-hipped through my mind, and my brain cells latch themselves together in creamy ganache combinations, like a cerebral Pinterest party. Or I overhear a conversation, and my ears catch the immortal words, fish and chips. Immediately, I see beige bombs descending into oil, batter erupting like a high school chemistry experiment. My taste buds turn wild and cultish, chanting, "The sacrifice is good," and muffling the desperate pleas of my arteries. I love simple decadence the way Bukowski was hatefully optimistic. It doesn't need to be ornate. I like potatoes. But when I say I like them, I really like them. Don't tell me how much butter you used. Tell me how much butter you used. That's how the battle works with me, like someone greased the seesaw of my life, so I need to be careful and focus on hanging on. All of the reasons I will never take a cruise can be summed up in 2 words: daily buffet. Somehow I figured out that the answer to being a satisfied steward lies in worshiping the gift while respecting the demon. For example, the fresh mint leaves steeped in warm, sweet cream and turned over the course of 2 days into an icy, soft summer infusion is an acceptable field trip for my pleasure-greedy senses. So is a long dinner with friends, or spending a small fortune on ingredients for the best sweet chili jam in the universe. We're talking fall fair blue ribbon good. The recipe says to simmer for 50 minutes. The recipe is wrong. I slow it right down and go for 4 hours until the whole house smells like slow cooker sorcery. When the bubbles pop like Barry White, that's when I know it's ready. I fill small jars to give as gifts, instructing that year's chosen few to go out and find sharp cheddar and a suitably subdued biscuit to lend crunchy applause. I keep 1 fat jar for myself, use it sparingly, make it last. After all these years, I finally learned when I take my time with the things I love, temptation isn't such a bad thing. Thank you. This one is called A Potion for Writer's Block. I read it at last year's Riga Festival in Summerland. The Riga Festival is dedicated to George Riga, fantastic playwright. He lived in Summerland for a long, long time. And this year's Riga Festival will be on this September long weekend, so I hope you can all come. So this is called A Potion for Writer's Block. You have to imagine, okay, first you have writer's block. And why have you come to me because you have writer's block? Because I run the baking club. So if I don't have something that will cure you, chances are I know a lady who knows a lady who knows a lady who has something of her grandmother's in the back cupboard who can solve all your ills. So something written on a little recipe card that her aunt had saved for her. So that's why you've come to me, and this is what I tell you. I think I've got something that could work. I'm pretty sure it will tilt the world enough to make the sunset split the sky and pour the passion you thought you've lost back into the cauldron again. First of all, I must remind you that you are a quirky, questioning, yummy thing. I see the way your empathy pockmarks its way into despair and how you carry on regardless. I see the sly grin that tells me you've always been your favorite seducer. There is a tundra in your mind that goes on forever. It is a living, wild place that is yours alone to explore. You'll never know if you're a trespasser or an invited guest and you're past the point of caring, because you can make whole cities sprout from nothing or slow the songbird's shrill call to a heartbeat's pulse. When you emerge after being away, the mist of that neverwhere kingdom is still on your skin. It flows off you when you stand in line to order your coffee. Maybe you're escaping into it, or maybe it's using you to experience this side of the proverbial tracks. It's a game of whose ghosts are whose. There have been times when all it took was the twist of the light to send one word tapping into another, into a full sentence was dispensed from your mind into your mouth. You held it on your tongue in a pool of electric joy and transferred its essence to the page before it had time to evaporate or be swallowed. This was all you needed to spot the gap in the curtain and move through, your hands shaking with the halting rhythm of your pen. There is a moment of helpless longing that takes over as you let yourself fall, flatten out, forget. Whatever the story might become, it picks you up and sets you coasting down a river of submissive rapture. But not today. Today, your hands rustle through the fabric and find no light shining through. You are stuck on this side, sick with worry at being so unceremoniously cut off. Calm down. It isn't what you think it is. This isn't the Cold War. No wall has sprung up overnight. The theater hasn't burned down. This is simply a suggestion to go for a nice, long walk without your notebook, without your camera, without your phone. My prescription is one of old-fashioned raw data transference. You are to take your body on an elaborate outing. Indulge it in vibrant food and sweet music. Let it dance badly and complete repetitive tasks. Work itself like a chemistry set concocting elixirs of hormones and electrical impulses. Think of it as a trade agreement between realms. The secrets your flesh tucks into itself when you're not looking become a valued currency in the whispering world you crave. The fire needs fuel or the pot won't simmer. It's not going to boil over. You're just going to have to leave it and trust that the right flavors will find their way in. In terms of quantity, I suggest a minimum of 3 lusty doses a week, with periodic plunges into the deep unknown for that extra kick of metaphorical spice. This should be something awe-inducing enough to act as a spiritual scrub down, but not so intense that you begin to distrust your own furniture. I mean, fly with the eagles and all of that, but keep it practical, okay? Now, while I charge no formal fee for service, I do have an affinity for honest, succulent lines scribbled on scraps of paper and handed to me in a conspiratorial manner. Or you can just think of me the next time you eat chocolate. Do me a favor, don't just chew, let it melt a little. Do that, and I'd say we're even. Thank you. 3 more minutes? Okay. Okay, I can do this. This one is just called Questions. Who makes you laugh more than anyone else in the world? What song do you play over and over when you're alone? When was the last time you took a pie out of the oven and cupped your mitted hands around the circle of syrupy warmth? Where did you park when you first discovered the amorous confines of a front seat? Why do you shy away when you start to smile? Who are the artists with the power to transport you? What makes one stranger more alluring to you than another? When was the last time you swore and really took the time to enjoy it? Where were you when you first learned about death? Why do you keep blaming yourself? Who taught you how to tie your shoes? What do you tell yourself you're going to do tomorrow? When did you last linger over a meal with someone who held your gaze in the most exquisite way? Where do you most often long to be? Why not just try and see what happens? Sometimes there is a universe of questions hiding behind a tiny string of words. How are you? Thanks. And this is my last one. This is for my best friend Jennifer. This is her favorite poem. She calls it the Sexy Times poem. It is called The Passionate Reader. I'm very bookish. Subtitle, Take That, 50 Shades of Grey. Okay. She approaches the bookshelf, sighs, and goes to him. She slips her finger over the edge of the binding, feels the pressure as she begins to pull. The sound the covers make as they slide past each other fills the room. She runs her hand over the worn edges, feels the bulge where the spine is broken. Gravity starts to tug inside her palm. She imagines the moment when she'll loosen her grip and watch the pages fall open as if on command. On the shelf, there's a small clip light, and she pinches an inch of pages and attaches it. She takes the wine glass from the table, flips the book over so the cover is pressed against her chest, and goes into the bedroom. Thank you. That's all my poems. Thank you, guys. Am I done? Am I done? Did I do it? Yay!
And welcome back to the show, and we're joined by the lovely Sophia Jackson, all the way from Summerland. Give it up for Sophia. Wasn't that amazing? So, now that you have done this, how does it feel? How does it feel being spotlighted on TV?
Scary.
Is
It's
it?
so scary.
Why is it
yes.
scary?
Because I've always written, but I've never kind of stood up and done my work in front of people. It's always just been on the page or online or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, this is just all new. The whole kind of theatrical side of it is very new.
Are you enjoying it?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't cease to be scary though.
So, is there anything about it that's surprising to you that you thought that it would be one way, but it's actually, you know?
The audience can really feed you. That's what I noticed from the slam, because I'd
right.
never been in front of that many people before, and it was so frightening. But it was really cool when I, because some of my stuff is a little bit funny because I make fun of myself.
Some of your stuff?
Some of the stuff.
All your stuff
A little
is
bit funny. A little bit funny.
And when she mentioned the slam, so for those of you probably at home that don't know, Sophia won the Springfield, Shelbyville slam that we just held back in January. First time she got up or participated in a slam. And a slam is a performance of poetry. So I love the fact that you signed up, you weren't sure, you did it, and then what happened?
I won.
What?
I won.
She won! Yeah! Do you remember what I said to you when you came off the stage?
No.
No, you were probably in...
I was so...
I think you were in a state of shock.
Yeah.
So... Sophia likes to kind of credit me and say, well, how do you put it? I lovingly...
Oh, the tender pressure, which because we met at the Riga Festival, and you were just like, so, yeah, you need to come to IWC. Like, you just like, so, yeah, you will come. You will come to IWC. So it was like, okay, okay.
It's hypnotic.
Yeah, it's
But
you just have this way to make someone believe that, maybe I could. And I recently hosted a storytelling night in Summerland, and Raul came out and told a story. And since then, there have been a few people in town who have come up to me and said, maybe I could tell a story. So it's kind of being passed on,
Nice.
that little bit of bravery, which is fantastic.
Pay it forward.
Which is really cool.
But when she came off stage, because when she said she was going to do it, she basically said, this is going to scare the S out of me.
So scary.
And
so
I
scary.
remember as soon as she walked up the stage, and I go, you should scare the S out of yourself more often, because that's what she did. And I just thought it was brilliant. And, it's funny, throughout the whole slam, you didn't look like the deer in the headlight, except when you were coming off the stage.
Yes.
Because I think you were just so caught up in, my God, I won this.
It was like, get off the stage as soon as I possibly can.
Yeah. So, how did you get into writing? What inspired you to write?
I have always, my first memory as a child is talking to myself.
Okay.
I used to lay in bed at night, and I didn't know how to tell stories in my head.
They have medication for that, eh?
Well, I don't take any. I just chocolates and cakes and chocolates.
Some would say chocolate is medication.
It is, actually.
Yeah, yes, it is.
But that was my first memory. I would lay in bed at night and just talk to myself, and I had these grand stories that I would tell.
Right.
I had 5 friends. We had a hot air balloon, a small dog, and we would go on adventures. And I would drive my parents absolutely insane, because my dad worked at the sawmill, and he had to get up very early, and there was this little child down the hall yammering away to herself until I finally learned how to tell stories in my head and not drive my parents crazy.
I think that's what makes you so brilliant, is your storytelling ability. And I'm always attracted to anyone that can tell a story, whether it's through poetry or song or stories themselves. So
what's weird is this is like a full circle now, because I've written, and I was a newspaper journalist for 5 years, and then I wrote blogs and stuff, but I've never, so this being talking out loud again.
So is it fair to say that this time now, this is for you?
Yes.
What sparked that?
My aunt's passing. Yes. So she passed about 1.5 years ago, and she was the first wild woman I ever knew.
Nice.
So, and she would love this. She would love it.
And I love that. There was a word in I think it was in your last piece, or maybe the piece before that, when you talked about succulent. And I remember reading a book years ago by a writer named Stark, and she talks about dance with your succulent self. And I think it's a word we need to bring back and use more. So good for your aunt.
Yes.
Not for passing, but for inspiring you.
She was pretty magical.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So part of all of this is, we want to get to know who you are, but we also want to get to know of you in a different way. So we know you're a baker, and your chili jam.
Yes, my sweet chili jam.
Die for.
It's very good. Raul has tried the sweet chili jam. Yes.
And I want more.
Okay.
But maybe we'll have an
takes so
IWC.
I make it once a year. It's a
Maybe
very
we'll
kind
have
of
an
exclusive
IWC farmers market.
potluck thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Note that down. But
Poetry and potluck.
who inspires you outside of like writers, poets? Who inspires you?
I go through phases. Last year, I was in a very big Charles Bukowski phase.
Okay.
And then singers as well. So when Mark was talking about lyricists, last year was also a big Tom Waits phase for me.
Yep.
But I love, Mary Oliver, Diane Ackerman. I love one of the writers in Summerland. I love a combination of nature writing, so facts and really nice prose. And Don Gayton is an ecologist in Summerland, and I love his writing. He has that kind of style that I like.
So if you were putting ingredients to make a bread, and the ingredients were poets,
Oh gosh.
who would be some of those poets that would go in?
Definitely Diane Ackerman. She wrote The Natural History of the Senses. She's phenomenal, amazing poet, amazing writer.
Okay.
So she would be in there for sure. Leonard Cohen is my first poetic love.
Who I thought should have won the Nobel. I'm okay with
Should've.
Bob.
It's
I'm
okay.
okay with Bob,
It's
but I
okay.
think Leonard should have won it,
Yes.
but that's okay.
And Jan Kaplinsky. He is a poet from Estonia. He's like the Estonian Margaret Atwood.
Oh, nice.
Everybody knows him in Estonia. But he's phenomenal. And I have his small book of poetry called The Wandering Border that I actually dragged around Europe with me for like 6 months. Everywhere I went, I took this poetry book of Jan Kaplinsky's.
One last question, real quick. If you were a vegetable, which vegetable would you be?
I would be a beet.
A beet.
A beet,
All right.
because
I love
it
beets.
features in, I think it's Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins. What is the line? Does anybody know it? The beet is the most intense of vegetables. So I would be a beet.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's only a half-hour show, but I feel like I could talk to you forever. I know we've become friends and we've talked, but
I was all ready for the cheese question as well. I was ready.
well,
okay.
we
It's
had
okay,
a
it's too
mishap, but
late
that's
now,
okay. I'm not going to ask you if you had to choose between Aaron and I because we know you would choose me.
Let's carry on.
Yeah, because I have more meat. But do you have your stuff anywhere online? Where can we find your stuff?
I haven't published any new stuff recently online. I used to write a blog called, when I lived in Scotland 7 years, I published a blog called Scotland for the Senses. And it was really, I would travel around and take pictures and write my gooey stuff about Scotland.
Nice.
So that's kind of where a good example of my writing lives.
Well, I will tell anyone that's interested in wanting to know more about her or know of her poetry, find her on Facebook, Sophia Jackson, or come through the Inspired Word Cafe on our Facebook page. Sophia, I want to thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Keep scaring the S out of yourself.
I will scare myself at the Riga
when you
Festival
do,
in
you
September.
do amazing things. And I think you're a prime example of when you get to a certain age in life, people think, oh, it's done, or man, you're just finding your stride. I'm so honored to witness and be a friend of yours.
Thank you.
You can find more of us on the Inspired Word Cafe on Facebook, on www.inspiredwordcafe, on YouTube under the Inspired Word Cafe. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for making this an incredible experience for our poet. And thank you for supporting poetry and the arts. And have a good night. Thank you very much.